Welcome to Recovery Inspired Hope. I'm so excited. I have my friend Shelly Bastian. She is going to be sharing her experience, strength, and hope in hopes that her story will help someone else. So, Shelly, say what's up to everybody.
What's up, everybody? How are you doing? I am in northern Utah, yes.
If you want to kind of start, tell everybody a little.
I totally enjoy taking photographs. I love being on social media. I love helping people. You know, there's no bigger reward than helping people doing service work. I do a lot of recovery stuff. I go to a lot of meetings. Recovery is the number one thing in my life. Without it, I wouldn't be who I am, or I'd probably be dead.
Facebook. Everybody, check out Shelly's group, which is
It's chaotic memes. Go check it out.
with a K. Okay, into it. Tell us a little bit about what it was like.
Well, I started as an only child, and pretty much my parents gave me everything I wanted. So I went out into the world with my hand out, thinking, "You owe it to me. I want it." They were the best parents they possibly could have been, but I was enabled. So I had this narcissistic attitude. I still do, but I'm not shallow anymore. Anyway,
At
you
least
know,
you're aware, though. At least you're aware. You can tell you've done some
right.
work for sure.
I've done some work on this. Yeah. So my dad introduced me to crack cocaine at age 12, and he just passed away 4 days ago. I had
Aw.
some major resentments against him. Like, I'm sure we all have resentments against our parents in some way or another. And I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. I called him um, just because I knew I would regret that if I didn't. And it was all good, all the resentments and everything bad I felt about him. When I saw him on video, he was so small and frail and he couldn't hurt me anymore. And it was a good ending. It was a good conversation. So that's my part where my dad, he introduced me to a lot of drugs, but I've been forgiven for a lot of things. And I think he needs to be forgiven too. Um, yeah, that's tough. And then I did crack till I was 18. And I looked up, I was in a room one time and we were all carpet surfing. I'm sure people know what carpet surfing is. If you have any addicts in here, it's where you're down on the floor looking for little white things to smoke because you think it's crack. And I looked up and there's a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old and a 60-year-old in those ages. And here I am at 18. I got up from that floor and never did that again because I didn't want that to be me. You know, I still used. I quit when um, I was clean for 17 years before I relapsed in 2018. And my date is December 31st, 2018. So I just hit my 4-year mark. Um, and dude, we all have our ups and downs. Just because you're in recovery or you're in a 12-step program does not mean that your life's going to be unicorns and rainbows. You know, um, it just teaches you to look at things differently. And I just want to share this experience. I started going to recovery when I was still using. And then finally, I decided what those people had, I wanted. And I finally surrendered for the first time in my life. And I got my answer, I got my awakening. And like I said, I was a narcissist, I still am. But I could see everything I was doing to everybody overnight. Overnight. It was a pure miracle. My husband would even tell you I've switched like night and day. And so that was my blessing, my awakening. And like there's 5 things in recovery. I know we're going to talk about other things, but there's 5 things in recovery that I feel like you need to succeed. Yeah, meeting makers do make it, but I feel like you have to have you have to have a connection with your higher power. Even if you have resentments, you're agnostic, whatever, you need to figure that out. It doesn't have to be a higher power of anybody else's understanding. It's your understanding. So if you want to follow other people in the religion, great. But if you want to get a connection with your higher power that only you understand, you know. And so higher power, meetings, sponsor, because you need to build that rapport because it's it's like picking up the 5,000 pound phone. You don't want to call anybody with your problems, you know, and step work, which people don't do it, but they're really missing out when they don't do it. And then um, service work. Service work is the biggest thing that I've ever felt. And like, if somebody offered me $5 million to never feel that again, I wouldn't do it because it's the biggest payment that you could possibly receive, and the unconditional love that you receive from these rooms. Anyway, sorry.
Wow. Now that was some straight wisdom, Shelly. So okay, 13 years old and your father gives you crack. I mean, I can't even imagine, like I'm thinking about like 13 years old, what do the other 13-year-olds
Well,
think about, or 12,
yeah,
12. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, we're like, I think I was still playing with Barbies when I was 12, so
yeah.
such a young age to be, introduced. Now, were you in school at all or were you out of school?
No, I was in school. Um, okay, so my real dad gave me up, and my adopted dad adopted me, the one that was married to my mom. Yeah, we could talk about molestation there too. He never had intercourse with me, but he was always trying to get with me from age 10 on. So, and I'm not trying to play victim here. This is just what's happened. And I'm trying to get through it with counseling and therapy. And, my mom informed me that I wasn't molested because he didn't have intercourse with me. But there were so many other things. So it's okay. Like, that's something I'm dealing with because I'm like, am I overreacting? Was I molested or was I not molested?
I feel like when something is inappropriate.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And some people say he didn't molest me, but he groomed me. But I looked up the definition, and it says any unwanted sexual advances or whatever. And that's a hard one for me to deal with because my dad just died on Saturday. And I wanted to make amends with my mom because I don't want to be in the same situation. And she was very rude and told me I wasn't molested. And that's a hard one to swallow, especially when it's your mom that's supposed to be protecting you, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Your mom. And then also that affects, every other relationship with a female for the rest of your.
Yeah, it sure does. And unfortunately, things like that cause PTSD. I mean, you think PTSD is from guys that go to war but unfortunately, I believe that the majority of our people have some sort of PTSD without even knowing, you know. Um, I think that they think it's such a minimal thing, or they're just having a bad day. But people I talk to, they're like, well, do you ever have this? And I'm like, yeah, honey, that's PTSD. So
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Yeah. And people, I feel like, especially like, depending on what kind of family you're from,
yeah,
I come from like a Sicilian family where it's like, nobody talks about the elephant in the room, nothing goes
right.
outside the family, stop crying, get over
Yeah, it's all
it.
right here. We don't share it with anybody. This is how it is.
Mhm.
Right.
Exactly. And that's so not how things should be. And it creates, like PTSD is a real thing. And you're so right.
It
I mean,
is.
you can get it, like you can be traumatized from so many different things. I feel like you said, like everybody is traumatized in one way or another
Right.
because we're,
I just don't think they realize it as much. But
Mhm.
that makes me feel bad that so many people are coping with this by themselves. You
Yeah,
know, with the whole medical thing, they put people in jail, and they're awful to them when the majority of the time it's mental illness, you know?
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And talking about going to jail. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been arrested, but man, does that cause some PTSD too? It's like,
Dude, we won't go into that. I was attacked by a couple of cops for no reason at the hospital, and I have severe PTSD. If I see an officer, I start freaking out. Um, Yeah, not good. And see, I was one of those people that thought, oh, the police are wonderful. You're not getting attacked unless you did something to get attacked. Well, I found out that's not the truth. So, I mean, I still am for all of them. I still think they need funding. But I just think that some of them need to be more compassionate.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that for sure. So you at such a young age had 17 years in recovery. I
Yeah.
mean, that is that to be a person, an 18-year-old and say, I'm going to be in
Well,
recovery.
no, I didn't stop crack. I stopped crack at 18. I
Okay.
didn't stop everything until 2001.
Okay.
And and then I had 17 years clean.
Still very young though to be, what I mean?
Yes. I wasn't in recovery though. I
Okay.
was clean,
Hmm.
but there's a difference. In recovery, you're bettering yourself. It's not just a drug and alcohol program, it is a life program. Okay. When you start a 12-step program, you better just give up your life because that's what it's about. And it's not giving up your life, it makes your life a million times better, and you start to see things differently and it's not near as bad. I mean, it's not even close. So, I didn't have recovery in those 17 years. I'll tell you what
Okay.
I usually tell people. When I had my awakening, it was like a black and white silent film before my awakening. And then after that, it was like Dolby, digital sound, 3D, in your face, action, adventure, horror. It's almost being blindfolded your whole life. Or it's almost being like, when you're by a fire and all you can see is like smoke, you can't see through it. Well, that's kind of what it was like without recovery. When I got into recovery, it was unicorns and rainbows because compared to my old life, yeah, it's unicorns and rainbows. It teaches you how to look at things differently. And just looking at things differently changes your whole life. And doing it teaches you how to do gratitude list and book work and read meditations. And it's just all good. It's what normal people do on a regular basis. We're just a little slower.
I'm definitely I'm a 12-step baby myself. So
Good.
that was my pathway. Started with NA, then did AA, then did Celebrate
Yep.
Recovery. Done the steps several times and love, taking women through the steps. That's
Right. So you
super
know how
blessing.
important the steps are.
I mean, yeah, like for me, I mean, I know some people, you know what I mean? I know there's different pathways, but for me, I can
That's the pathway.
say
Yep.
that 12 step changed my life. It helped me get myself out of the way. It helped me forgive myself. It helped me get a connection back with God. It helped me
Yeah.
learn where I was wrong. It helped me be accountable, and it helped me to forgive, and it helped me to learn how to carry a message to someone else, and it
Right.
me learn how to have relationships with other women because
Right.
like with your mom, I had a lot of rejection stuff with my mom, a lot
Yeah.
of things, and it was like I didn't trust women, so
Me neither.
yeah, happy to have a sponsor. And I remember, well, you have to call me every day for 30 days. Like, what? Call you for what? It was so awkward at first. Step work for me, that was my pathway. Going back to the 5 things you talked about, service work is definitely, I call it my love language in recovery.
Me too. Me too. It's funny you say that because I say the exact same thing.
It's like I feel like if a person can figure out what their love language is in recovery, where they
Yeah.
fit in to serve, like you can keep that passion and fire growing for recovery forever,
Right.
right? So because
That's if you want to continue to do the work and you don't get complacent like a lot of people do, you
right,
know.
right.
And but the thing is they forget what it's like to be a newcomer. They forget how important what they're doing is. And they start to get complacent. And these are the people I hate to see because they've got so many years of recovery and they think, oh, I got this. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't.